One. Love Talk Radio. Come back home to Africa. She's calling your name to win. Come back home to Africa. The fatted calf and golden rain are waiting for you once again.
Greetings, come on in. Come on in, it's Wellness Monday, October 25th, 2021. Come on in, welcome to another edition of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. All is truly and indeed a blessing. If you can just see beyond the veils, it's all just an illusion and a test of one of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. Come on in, welcome to another edition of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. All is a blessing. Greetings and salutations. Welcome. Greetings, Martha Martinez. Blessings, beloved. Come on in. Welcome. Greetings and salutations. Come on in, Blog Talk Radio, area code 845-277-9143, 845-277-9143. When you're ready with your question, comment, or request, please do press the number 1 on your telephone keypad. I will be more than happy to unmute your mic and bring you into the conversation. Greetings from my international listening audience on Blog Talk Radio. I honor you. I appreciate you. I'm indeed grateful for your listenership. Come on in, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, EarthCam, my website at www.houseofthedivineprince.com. Come on in, welcome, come on in. Greetings and salutations to you and yours, Mom O from the UK. All is a blessing, divine joy and happiness, health and wellness to you and yours. Greetings, Shamafia, beloved. Blessed awesomeness to you and yours as well. Richard Gordon, greetings from Belize. Come on in, Belize. Greetings. All is a blessing. Matthew Ferguson, greetings from Pensacola, Florida. Come on in. The beloved Mosaic, the Soul's Poet. Good afternoon, beloved. Thank you for your time, your love, your support, your patience, your appreciation. Greetings, Renee, Marie. All is truly and indeed a blessing. Eshu Alegwana Kosi Were Awu Onlo Uto Ne Iwo Ada Afanbo Osi O Batalami Itani Evo No Ilio Abane Shu. Eshu is the respected elder who flogs, confronts, uncovers fools. That one versed in mysteries uses truth to own you. He causes scatter to feed poverty. Obatala shakes rascals to have sacrifice. The owner of warnings is the one who is Eshu. Aboru, Aboye, Aboshishe, Ashe. May I ever reach a room. May I ever be accepted. May I ever allow what we desire to come to pass. And so we say Ashe. Divine, all blessed greetings and salutations, one and all. You are now sitting again live with the Divine Prince, Pan-African Spiritualist, Practitioner, Author, and Advisor, Elagun Oloye Hoodoo Obeya Bokur, sharing with you in all things spiritual, mystical, metaphysical, cosmic, evolutionary, revolutionary, healing, and holistic from a Pan-African Hoodoo, world spiritualist perspective. Understanding that all is truly and indeed a blessing if you can just see beyond the veils, for it is all just an illusion and a test and one of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. This is indeed my constant prayer, my mantra, affirmation, reverberation, reiteration, and it is my ever-living reality. All is a blessing is crucial to the very foundation of my understanding, my teaching, my walk, my work, my demonstration along this divine, all blessed life path and journey. It is how I, the Divine Prince, make sense out of all that we're challenged with here in our daily existence on Mother, Father, Earth. And it is my personal place of power and understanding. The place from where I begin, the place from where I realize and crystallize all my endeavors, understanding that I and I alone create and co-create my divine destiny, and I alone create and co-create my divine all blessed reality. And so it is. Ashe. This beloved Monday, October 25th, 2021, I am emanating and vibrating with you and for you now live, virtually, verbally, cosmically, quantum universally, from this working temple of the house of the Divine Prince. Thai Potions, Hoodoo Central, in this beautiful, historic, most enchanted, and some would say most haunted city in America, New Orleans, Louisiana, the land of my ancestors and those who came before me along this Hoodoo Obeah life path and journey, passing down the great Obeah stick, along with the knowledge of the life-giving herbs, roots, plants, rituals, spirits, minerals, and indeed, as our beloved Denise Augustine would say, our sacred stories. Indeed, our sacred stories. I'm always humbled, honored, and grateful to share this space with you at high noon, U.S. Central Standard Time on blogtalkradio.com/the-divine-prince. You can also call in and listen in at area code 845-277-9143, 845-277-9143. You can also enjoy me in all the commonly divisible social media outlets. You can also turn on your webcam and mic and join me here on StreamYard by following the link. Let me see. By following the link that is now scrolling at the bottom of your screen. So I'm indeed grateful and always honored by those of you who choose in the middle of your day, whatever time it is in your area code and your zip code and your place on the planet. I'm always truly honored and grateful that you take the time out to share in this created, self-created, shared sacred space that we all participate in at high noon, U.S. Central Standard Time, here on Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. Greetings, Tomcat, Richard Gordon, welcome, welcome. Come on in, Divine Self-Healing. Thank you so much for your continued support. Renee Marie, come on in. Big Chief, come on in. Hunana. Greetings to you and yours as well. Welcome, Angel 123. Blessings, beloved. Infinite blessings to you and yours, my beloved Orisha, and your household. Thank you so much for always being supportive, always being in the house, always having my back, and being a consistent participant and listener here on the show. I wanted to talk just a little bit today in the spirit of the day. And some of you understand when I say the spirit of the day, the ritual calendar of the day, some of you fully understand what's going on. Sometimes I throw a hint or two of color, every now and then to sort of help you keep on track with where things are. But before I move forward in a discussion, in any discussion, but particularly this discussion today about hearing from spirit personally, not necessarily through the pastor or the imam or the reader, but hearing from spirit personally, and then moreover personal divination and personal forms of divination that don't necessarily require you seeking out a Babalawo, a Mambo, a Ianifa, a Hogan, a Voodoo priest, etc. Now, those who are actively participating in ancestral work and divination, maybe you've done some Ori work, and for certain, if you are initiating with me beyond those foundational pillars, you understand that all things in the realm of spirit communicate through forms of what we call divination. But we could simplify it, as spirit speaks indeed in nature. Spirit speaks in and through our food. Spirit speaks in and through our water. Spirit speaks in and through the rocks and the weather changes that we prepare for and endure in each and every waking moment of our living, breathing existence as a part of this greater universal body. And I say greater universal body because we've been taught to sort of separate ourselves from nature and thus separate ourselves from God or from divinity. God is something that exists way up here beyond the cosmos, beyond the sky, and we're sort of here sharing a limited space with animals, natures, bacteria, other forms of living, breathing components of nature, but indeed those of a more universal consciousness. Understand that we are one organism with multiple organs and multiple limbs and structures to it, but indeed one flying organism through space and time in the cosmos. And we indeed share much of our existence, coexistence, with not just our own consciousness, but that of the divine creators itself, and indeed nature itself. So I start any endeavor first reminding myself and others that we stand on the shoulders of great and mighty ancestors. For indeed, without our ancestors, we would not have our very physical, and some would say even our spiritual being. We indeed have our breath and our life and get our cosmic ray from the divine creator or creators itself. But it has built in a system for us of creation and procreation that passes through that of our great mothers. So reminding you that the Black woman is God, the Black woman is God, indeed the Black woman is God. And if science and all creation says that we come from the belly of Mother Nature, the belly of the mother continent, the belly of the Great Mother, that indeed we are all born divine, just as we are all born human. We're not all born adults. We're not all born mature. We don't pop out and we ready to go. but we certainly are born human and then go through an evolutionary process of development. So we can therefore coexist in nature, but in spirit as well as divine co-creators, and continue to create and recreate the reality that we feel, that we sense, that we see mirrors our best interests. Now, it's in the seeing and the sensing and the feeling that I want to have some conversation about today. Hearing from spirit, because it's not always going to be, the crystal ball, the great tarot card reader, the Obi-Abata system, the Ifa system. Indeed, the creators, nature, the ancestors, our bodies, our food, our plants speak to us each and every moment of the day when we're conscious and we are aware. Now, I understand conscious has taken on a bit of a relative terminology and definition in modern times. We have conscious as opposed to being unconscious or knocked out. And then we have that what we consider to be conscious, or those who are somehow in the know of things, spiritually speaking. And that word still remains to be determined, indeed defined. I believe and I teach and I understand that any moment that we have to first wake up and breathe again and breathe again and are aware of our consciousness, then we are indeed operating in consciousness. Now, that's not to say that we make the best decisions at every corner of life, at every turn or intersection of our reality. But indeed, as long as we have life, breath, limbs, as the old folks used to say, clothed in my right mind, then we indeed have consciousness. We're not, in ICU. We're not, in between the twilights, save for that which happens in our dream state. And we cross over between the dreaming state, the creative state. Musicians know what I'm talking about. Artisans, painters, crafters, people who envision things in their imagination and then bring them into fruition. Understand what I'm talking about when I say our creative state. It's a very fine line between our creative state, our dream state, our imaginations, and indeed the spirit realm. And these are places that any proficient reader, but I would suggest any proficient, conscious, spiritual person would need to be proficient in terms of tapping and being clear about hearing the voice of God or hearing from spirit. For indeed, we hear many voices. And I'm not suggesting mental health or the imbalanced states of mental health that might induce the hearing of voices. No, I mean, we hear as natural, conscious human beings many voices. You hear that of your parents, your mom, your dad, your grandparents, your guardians, those who raised you and implanted certain phraseology, certain songs, certain wording, certain body mannerisms on the consciousness at a very young state. And then there's the voice of religion in some households, the pastor, the imam, the priest, the pope, the minister, the great teacher, who then implants a certain pattern, recording of voices of memory that we hear and sometimes repeat. There's that which is incurred by existing in society, pop culture, what we see on the news every day, what we hear in the tabloids and the magazines on any given day, what you hear being talked about and discussed, in the break room or on the public transportation, or in your social setting at any given point. So we indeed, as a natural component to being human, hear many voices. But how then do we distinguish hearing voices, hearing a repeated memory, if you will, a repeated moment in time, as opposed to really breaking through the spirit realm and hearing the voice of God, or hearing indeed the voice of Orisha or Loa, who often don't speak, by the way, but can speak, can push through the spirit realm. I can remember being a young person, in the church, hearing people talk about God bless them in the lotto, or God bless them with the great job, or God bless them, and they, thought they had the worst of credit, and were able to walk out, or drive off the lot, with the brand new car, but you rarely hear conversation about communication from God to man. We often leave that in the hands of the leader, the teacher, the reader, in some cases, the spiritualist, the specialist. And in some cases, it's best to leave certain things to experts, But then there's a component to just our being human that is also in constant connection, or should be, or would rather be in constant connection with nature, with the creators. I can remember back in the day, older folk, could feel the weather, through their knee, in their back, or could smell rain, coming. We had a different degree of connection to nature before the numerous inventions of technology that we have now that sort of block out natural light, block out our ability to see the sky clearly at night, block out our ability to hear nature, the frogs, the crickets, the other animals sort of rustling through the bushes and the trees, where there might still exist bushes and trees. And so there are many artificial things in place that not only limit our ability to hear from nature and hear nature with any degree of clarity, but to get in between our ability to hear spirit versus only accepting that which we can see, taste, feel, buy with money, the material realm, the material possessions that we have, and our physical material bodies and existence. We seek God, when we want to win a great bet, or when our team, is in the Super Bowl, or when we're about to enter the contest, or the your quiz, or your what's the word I'm looking for, your test, in school, in the universities, your final exams. We seek out God in a sort of guttural third chakra sort of way. It's either thank God, praise God, or I hope to God, God help me. It's a very guttural third chakra level pronunciation, as opposed to one that might come from a higher octave or chakra point. That which we speak into existence, fifth chakra, that which we can see, or having vision, being able to see a vision before it becomes our reality, and certainly seventh chakra and higher energy, which might intersect us with our ultimate and truly our destiny. As some would say, as written by God, as written by even our higher selves. Something that any great meditator, any great practitioner, any religious individual, anyone who claims to hear from Jehovah, who claims to hear from Jesus, should first and foremost be able to be quiet. To be quiet. And being quiet is not as easy as it might sound. It is indeed not as simple as just buttoning your lips. If anyone has ever tried to meditate for the first time, or sees themselves as a bit of a beginner when it comes to meditating, you know that being quiet is more than just sealing the lips, buttoning the lips. It's also an act of silencing those voices that I first talked about, that are often speaking through, reminding us, correcting us, sometimes judging us, often not applauding us enough, and then there's what you've forgotten, your dinner schedule, your grocery list, that final exam that's coming, and you're losing time. There's a degree of other things that occupy and preoccupy both our left and right brain activities that can interfere with being still, which is going to be my number 2, and being quiet, which is number 1. Because it's not enough to just be quiet. Because some of you can be quiet, can go within and kind of hear, from spirit, but your hands are still moving. Your feet are still moving. You're still doing this, you're still doing that, and you do not feel comfortable sitting still. And sometimes this is a byproduct of those inner voices that once upon a time said, oh, well, you're lazy if you're not constantly in motion. You're not doing enough if you're not doing enough. And some of those voices come from parenting. Some of those voices come from pressure at the academic level. Some of those voices come from peer pressure within the dynamics of our social group, social settings, that suggest that, you reach a certain age, you pass a certain goalpost, you should have a certain amount of things, you should be doing certain things in your life, and so being quiet is critical to being able to not just be a diviner, someone who could read the shells and the bones and indeed interpret tarot card, but being a good student of spirit, student and practitioner of your own spiritual journey. Third would be to just be humble and accept and understand that there is indeed something greater than ourselves, higher than ourselves, that indeed sees and knows and understands things from a perspective that we can't, particularly we can't within just our animal nature. And you can call it God, you can call it supreme mind, supreme consciousness, supreme mathematics, call it what you will, label it as you will, but accepting that there's something, this planet is bigger, greater, more mysterious than we still know and understand. The bottoms of the sea, greater, vaster, deeper, much more complex than we still have a full understanding of. So being humble, and not just to, humble to the elder who might impart some knowledge, some wisdom, demonstration. Humble to the child who teaches from a place of innocence and often purity. Humble to nature. Weather is as weather does. And so we adjust to the heat. I think it'll be in the late 80s here today in New Orleans. We'll adjust to the cool. I think we'll be in the 50s, in the 60s, but by the weekend, we'll adjust to the weather, the rain, the snow, whatever the weather might be, to where we are at any place in our existence. Physical, but also spiritual. Geographic place, but also spiritual place in our existence. Sometimes you're just in a very dry place and you just need some water. You need moisture, you need wetness. You need to be rejuvenated. Sometimes it's just water everywhere. And we need to create and build an island of understanding and create an island of vision that mirrors a place, a destiny, a goal in which we seek. But first, we've got to be humble and accept that there are forces, there are powers outside our control. There are forces, there are powers that are divinely innate and inherent, that are built into the system, that indeed work towards our good, but are not entirely in our control. Beyond being humble and allowing big gods and big things and big systems to do as they will and find our rhythm, our place in it, is being open, is being open. Open not just to something new, open to indeed change, and in many cases just open to, again, being humble and accepting that there are things that's so much bigger than our limited understanding at any point in our human journey. Being open. I've told the story before, and so I won't repeat it again today. But earlier on in my journey, particularly as a young person, I would often question God, and I have some questions that I'm going to share as I move forward today in my topic. But I would question, what I was supposed to understand, and with what clarity that understanding was being put in front of me. Was it indeed me being clouded by the trauma, by the pain, being clouded sometimes by the past, by your experience, and having experienced something more than once, several times over, then being clouded by the expectation that you would indeed have and repeat and reshare that experience. But being open to all the possibilities and dynamics of that which are beyond our seeing, which are indeed beyond our ability to understand. Right now, you might understand better tomorrow or next week, but just beyond our understanding right now. And again, being open to the presence of God, of the ancestors, and their ability to maneuver things right in our path, always in our best interest, so that we can make that shift, make that turn. So we got to be open to not just options, sometimes being open even when there might not appear to be options. The next critical point on a list of really hearing from spirit, knowing that you are authentically and genuinely in touch with and connecting with spirit, is to be honest. Is to be honest. And one of my greatest tools for maintaining honesty and on a spirit journey is keeping a journal, keeping a magic book, a grimoire. Call it what you need to call it. Okay, call it what you need to call it if it's going to get you to commit to doing it, and to doing it regularly, and to doing it more often. Keeping a journal. Often our first lessons, our first proof, our first documentation of indeed hearing from spirit and being able to validate that is from what we document in our journal. Keeping accurate accounting of the dream, accurate accounting of the vision, and to include the daydream, those moments in our day when we slip out and slip in, and sometimes have the most absorbent dreams, sometimes the most absorbent fantasies. Document those to the best of your ability. Try and remember the day, the time, the hour, the cycling of the planets, the moon stages at the time. The better you're able to document, the more able you are to repeat those things which you find give proof to a skill, a talent, or a particular ability. Some of us have a greater ability to see some things over other things, but it's often through our journaling and keeping a well documented journey that we discover those areas where we're best, where our strengths tend to really shine through. Thank you, Yoel Adams. I often forget to say that myself. Please remember to like, subscribe. You can stop now and like, subscribe. By all means, share. I certainly would appreciate that. Thank you, Yoel Adams. I probably don't sell, advertise enough in social media. No, Rowan Redison. I am in New Orleans, Louisiana. Said to be the most northernmost Caribbean city, New Orleans, Louisiana. Also said to be the most African city in America, New Orleans, Louisiana. So, but thank you for asking. No, this is New Orleans. Matthew Ferguson. Okay, yeah, I will be glad to do that at some point in the show if I don't have it already. No, I guess I don't. Okay, give me some time and I'll come back to that. But thank you for that, Matthew Ferguson. Rowan Redison, the best way, and to be quite frank, the only way to acquire an appointment with me is by email. And so you can email me at DivinePrince at houseofthedivineprince.com. I'll be more than happy to respond to you. I am available typically 24 hours a day, but if I'm tied up at the moment, just be patient with me, but I'll always respond to you in a timely manner. Greetings, Marcus Anwar Wadi. Greetings, beloved. Thank you for being with us. Yes, indeed. Greetings, the Goddess Initiative. Greetings, beloved. Greetings, Tosh. Divine greetings, divine peace and blessings. Shamafia Rothschild. Do you ever ask Source why there's so much violence in nature? I do, but we are nature, so we have violent tendencies. Yeah, and I would even offer that you go into your YouTube and look at more astronomy videos. Right now, I'm sort of going through a post. Of course, I'm talking about it now, and I don't have the list like out in front of me. But it was basically about new discoveries as it relates to black holes and how black holes work. Greetings, beloved Haya. Greetings. So, Shamafi, I have been watching these new black hole videos that are, available for anyone to sort of check out on YouTube, because they tell me and teach me so much about what we still don't know and understand about dark energy and indeed dark matter. And I've always taught and understood that, a great deal of what we consider negative, or what we consider violent, particularly when we pass it through a human prism, which is going to involve so much ego and selfishness and carnality. But when we look at what we call violence and then see, the lion go after the gazelle in nature, see the shark, eat the seal, in nature, we indeed see a cycle of energy consuming itself and then expelling that energy so that it can then go on to be created and recreated again somewhere else in creation. And so when we look at the activity of black holes, and I like to, work with black obsidian particularly black obsidian spheres, when I'm studying and meditating over black holes. And we think of how the energy pulls all things into it, including light, sucks everything into it. And we see it as this great, violent and terrible destruction. And so one of the videos that I've recently viewed was the reemergence of white light, this sort of pure stream of white light that reemerges. I believe that's a quasar from the other side, of the black hole, and how society continues to sort of mimic and repeat nature. Nature mimics and repeats itself. We have a saying, does art imitate life? Does life imitate art? But indeed, does humanity imitate nature? And let's not limit nature to, the extremes of humanity, or the extremes of our human nature, or the extremes of our earth environment, but indeed look at it on a more cosmic, universal scope, where we see even light being sucked into a portal, this gateway of change and transformation that we only identify and understand right now as a black hole, to thus then be reborn somewhere new. I was taught, even in the expelling of energy, there's a proper way to cleanse. There's a proper way to cleanse your body, as it is to cleanse your house, as it is to cleanse spirit, as it is to cleanse an environment. And so that energy is, you're not just sweeping it out into the street for the next person to sort of pick up, because energy, we know from quantum metaphysics, is eternal. All the energy that will ever exist in our realm of understanding is here right now. It's just being recycled, renewed, consumed by one thing and expelled to then be consumed by another, utilized and expelled to then be regathered and reused and recycled again somewhere indeed in the universe. I think about humans and our ability to sort of act what we would call irrationally, as it relates to violence, as it relates to greed, for instance. An animal can only eat as much as it can eat. It doesn't store it for the most part, except maybe your squirrels and a few other animals. You have some that can generate and produce their own food. Plants can generate and produce their own food. So when we think about human behaviors that we deem violent, destructive, negative, hurtful, there's a lot of ego and a lot of carnality and a lot of selfishness attached to it that we don't necessarily see sort of mirrored back to us in nature. So it then can again be evidence of us having a divine nature, whether that be God or the devil, but us having a nature that supersedes just physicality, just to meet the needs of the physical body machine, to keep it running, to keep it moving. But we step outside that sometimes to do things to make us happy or to feed certain aspects of the multifaceted person, that each of us as an individual indeed are. So there's a deeper way of examining that, Shamapia. But I appreciate your comment. Arisha, can you speak about reprogramming DNA? Do we have the ability to reprogram our DNA? Is it done through meditation and other methods? I believe it's a combination of meditation, conscious thought, reprogramming of the consciousness, of the mind, of our behaviors, of our attitudes, of our taste. You have a certain set of tastes, at 18, you might not like onions at 18. You might love onions at 28. We indeed have an opportunity to create and recreate the reality that mirrors our best interest, most certainly. But I also think other things have to go along with the meditation. Other things have to go along with just the positive thinking. Other changes, other activities have to go along with just, the strong, mantra. And indeed comes in what we eat, but also through actions and activities. I learned at a very young age to occupy the left brain while the right brain is busy. For instance, you're a creator. So I'm creating music and I'm creating a new piece on the piano. And so your fingers are sort of doing left brain activity, which is sort of calculated and mathematical and to some degree automatic, whereas your right brain is said to be your creative side, your where your imagination dwells, where your ability to sort of transcend into the spirit realm dwells. So keeping note, writing in a journal, or playing a particular piece of music while thinking about, chanting a particular piece of music while thinking about or while saying something repeatedly can reprogram the mind, can reprogram the body, and done with enough repetition and of course timing, length, duration, then we can certainly impress upon things and encode them, within our DNA, ending generational curses, ending certain behaviors in one generation that maybe was once said to be, generational curse, something that happens, repeatedly. But we've also seen things like certain health conditions skip a generation. So I do believe that, in so reprogramming, that then is impressed upon those who follow, i.e. your children, your grandbabies. They saw grandma eat a certain way, so then they continue to sort of eat a certain way, and that energy within itself can endure through many lifetimes beyond just our own. Greetings, Mom. Peace and blessings. Okay, I agree. I accept. I support. Yeah, the Goddess Initiative offers that Orisha, just as trauma encodes in our DNA, we can reprogram it, indeed, to healing. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Um, an example I like to use is when we see, particularly certain ethnic groups from, let's say, Asia, that we, now listen, this isn't a political or racial discussion. So, this isn't about politics, whether people are starving in their home countries, none of that, okay? But when we see people move from Asia or from the Mediterranean, another area of the world known for their diet, the Mediterranean diet, the Greek diet, and of course Asians, a lot of vegetables, produce, then you got that starch, rice base, and then some protein, quick protein, quick meat. And we see them arrive, at a certain weight, at a certain body dynamic overall, only to pick up very Western-like behaviors, and then the outward, signs of those behaviors within a generation. Their first generation children, maybe their grandchildren even, now picking up conditions that are said to be Western. Heart problems, obesity, high cholesterol. They're eating more fatty foods. They're eating more salts and sugars and artificial, this, that, and the other. So we indeed can see evidence of behaviors, traumas being encoded on the DNA that can then be carried away as a generational curse for years to follow, but can also remove and reprogram and change and renew things that could have once been said to be something you just have to deal with. We know diabetes is being demonstrated to be something that can be absolutely dialed back through behavior, through lifestyle, through diet. And then when that is passed on in a healthy way to others, to the next generation, or even to other people, it grows. The positive grows and renews itself. Far Eye for Life, greetings. Let's see. Do the rituals the ancestors require change with the seasons, or do they remain unmovable through generations? There is absolutely a degree of ritual practice. We call that tradition, that, sort of remains relatively, quotation marks around relatively, cohesive from generation to generation. But even if we just take, just carve out any particular country or region in the indigenous world or in the Aboriginal world, and then look at their adjustments to climate change or their adjustments to colonizers, and how that has affected and changed the dynamics of the practice and the tradition. I think that even, again, in nature, if you over plant, harvest a particular species, you run the risk of not getting the same quality as something that's being, diversely pollinated, diversely fed, even within the dynamics of nature. So there's a certain consistency. There is indeed a rule book to how we acknowledge ancestors, relatively speaking, but indeed that has and continues to change with not just the seasons or with weather, but great, let's call it upheavals in cultural climate. Female genital mutilation, sounds just abhorrent, to us and to the modern ear. Whereas it was almost universally, if not globally, accepted, 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago in certain regions of the world, among certain Aboriginal communities of the world. We still find a way to sort of evolve things that we find attractive or palatable, like tattooing or body piercing. This is, probably not as offensive to some people as, I don't know, tongue piercing or nipple piercing, but it's probably as offensive as tongue piercing and nipple piercing to some people of maybe an older generation, or a different mindset of understanding. So we indeed see traditions, and I don't know if change is even sort of the right word. We sort of go with, what's happening. You go with what's available. You cook with what's available, to be forested, to be harvested, you know, to be hunted, you know, in your region. And so we have some cultures, some ethnic groups that have moved, nomadic culture, in search for better or more of. And then you have others that have remained in place and have learned to sort of harvest and cultivate and create and recreate. And so I think we can, in looking at tradition versus sort of spontaneous evolution, um, how spirit speaks can also be sort of examined in a similar way, particularly when we think of Fa, Ifa divination system, where there are indeed 256 combinations in total that don't change, you know, that have stayed the same for thousands or more years. But then in the body of the text, what verbs, what proverbs, what protocols apply are contingent on the weather, the season, the need, the dynamic of the problem, indeed, that we might be addressing at any given time. Looking at the Mayans, the Aztecs, and we hear tell, old folks used to say, we hear tell of, we hear stories of, you know, human sacrifice, for instance. And there's still this great debate, you know, is that just theatrical language? Is it just some, you know, contextual religious conversation that we don't understand? Or is it indeed something that absolutely happened within the context of their time and their society, where, you know, throwing humans into a well, for instance, you know, was seen as justifiable action for, you know, preventing a drought, you know, or trying to, you know, call down rain or water. And so we grow and we evolve and we renew our traditions and how we view our traditions, while adopting new traditions and new practices and sort of new ways of doing things. Um, Artificially, we do so with the internet and social media. Now, I don't know if it's just me, but it doesn't seem to be moving quite like it was, I don't know, let's say between the 80s going into the 90s into 2000. Um, Even when we think of Yahoo 360, MySpace, um, then we sort of went into that whole Ning universe thing. There were a few other sites that came and went, but it seems like Facebook has been pretty consistent. Twitter has been pretty consistent. There's, you know, there's a different dynamic of change and evolution that's happening in the dynamics of how we use the internet and social media, and then maybe even how we use tools within social media, editing, filters. That's a new concept. You know, same material, but you add a filter to it. You add music to it. You know, so there are indeed traditions, I think, that maintain itself, you know, since the beginnings of humanity, the evolution of humanity, that still grow, that still evolve, that still get tweaked, much like our planet still grows, still evolves, will continue to tweak and rebalance itself, contingent on heat, coolness, vibration, activity, outside interference. You know, there are many degrees of weather. We can look at weather as something very different when we look at it from a cosmic perspective, as opposed to a communal perspective or even an individual perspective. Um, we all have sort of a blueprint for which we, you know, set up and identify ancestral work. But then there are individual tweaks that happen and that take place over time through accessibility, availability, what's available to you. How available is e-fund? in your community versus chalk in your community. Tweaks of tweaks of that nature. Modernization. We've moved from entirely housing ancestors outside and outdoors, much like cemeteries, stone tombs, to now having concrete indoor spaces that we acknowledge the ancestors that we don't consider filthy or unclean. There are no dead bodies involved. So indeed, there are traditions, there are habits, there are behaviors, there are religions, things that we do religiously that continue to grow and transform with our growth and our transformation, with the growth and transformation of the communities that we inhabit and live within, that continue to grow with the movement of the planet, Mother Nature, itself, and then continue to grow, with the movement of the cosmos, and the universe. We often look at 7 chakras, but there are just so many more degrees and levels in which we can view as it is above, so shall it be below. The microcosm mirrors the macrocosm. The 6-pointed star, that 3-pointed star facing up, and then you got the 3-pointed star, facing down. So we can look at the sky, we can look at the universe and see things that mirror our own development, our own reality. And I believe almost all world religions say that in some way, speak to that in some way. Greetings, Electro Vibes. Greetings. Yes, Yo Adams. The ego blocks and filters the awareness and connection from beyond. It most certainly does. And ego is something that I like to spend a lot of time thinking about, because sometimes I wonder, to what degree is ego indeed connected to the body? Is there a mechanism in ego that somehow protects the body, maybe, that somehow protects our place in reality, our concept of reality, as opposed to feeling displaced or diseased or imbalanced in our place in reality? And if so, where then is the line drawn where ego becomes selfish and self-serving and only about the excessive, even when the excessive is harmful? We hear of medieval, banquets where people, gorge themselves to excess on food, gorge themselves to excess on alcohol. Didn't seem to have a limit or boundary, if you will, on sex and overt and open sexual behaviors. And we look at what contributions are thus then made to society, by way of these sort of cultures that we now might deem, odd or unusual. Alafia Tasha, beloved, greetings. Tasha been around a long, long time. Greetings, beloved. Neophyte Bakur has been here, the God's Initiative. He has been coming under his government name, or his last name, which is Rollins. But he's been coming through. He was here at the last show. But thanks for asking. I'm sure he'll catch this, if not today in archive. I'll certainly let him know. Sometimes I get a little bit behind on my chat, but thank you so much for Life. Electro Vibes, osmosis. Yeah. Osmosis. Yeah, things, change because we perceive them as a change, because we want them to change. And we can get into a whole scientific discussion about, our reality and our place in reality. Some would say that we accept this reality, therefore it is our reality. We accept this reality, therefore it is our reality. And so folks who don't accept this as their reality, therefore appear to experience a very different reality than some of us who accept this as our reality, therefore it is your reality. Did y'all catch that? Do I need to say that again? Mom O, may I ask about starting from scratch to develop rituals, etc.? I'm first in my family for at least 10, maybe 20 generations to honor the divine, live spiritual. My ancestors are Scottish and English. I would suggest anybody of any ethnic group to, first of all, if you are, whether you're coming from a family steeped in religion versus a family that's, I don't know, atheist, agnostic, didn't do anything religiously, maybe didn't even eat at the dinner table religiously. I don't think it really matters either extreme. I don't think it matters. When someone begins the spiritual journey, you then are beginning something anew. Some religions like to say reborn, renewed. And so all of your behaviors at that level are going to be new, and to some degree might be ritualistic. It might be where you keep your perfumes and your colognes and your body oils, together in one place. It might be where you keep, your jewelry together in one place. There are all kind of ways that we begin altars and begin rituals in our lives. I remember working in the big city, Chicago, New York City, LA, it didn't matter where. But I had a ritual. I had a morning bagel ritual and morning coffee, and it would often involve a particular location. Here, I favor Chimay Coffee House, and in New York City, I had a different location. In LA, I had a different location, but it was a ritual that was unique to me, that was unique to my process, how I began my day, how I got my thinking cap on and got the juices flowing, and got into a certain mode of apparatus. Some of you, have been driving cars your whole life, and so you have a car ritual. It might involve certain music. It might involve oldies. It might involve gospel. It might involve new age. I think a healthy God, a healthy goddess, a healthy human is constantly developing and redeveloping ritual. So that's an opening. A start would also be to then consider nature and how the elements show up in our lives: earth, water, fire, air, and indeed mind or ether or the spirit realm. I like to count that as the 5 principal elements to life: earth, water, fire, air, mind, or ether, and the spirit realm. So begin looking at ways to get better acquainted with nature. I've been a big walker a great deal of my life. It's shifted in the last few years for some reason, but I've been a big walker a great deal of my life. I have had no choice, but it's also been an outlet, a prayer outlet, a spiritual outlet, a meditative outlet for me. So getting in touch with the nature in your environment, in your community, what's edible in your environment, in your community, what's pretty, what's beautiful in your environment, in your community, what indeed can be improved in your environment, in your community, are all ways, again, to begin anew at developing ritual and establishing rituals that can then become something that your family dynamic does. Greetings, greetings, beloved. Thank you for being here. Satans, greetings, greetings. We certainly appreciate you. Now, Mom O, you can most certainly send me an email at my email address, and I'll be more than happy to sort of help you to personalize that. There are some other elements to some of the questions that you're asking that I would normally cover in ancestral work and divination. Dreams is an entire topic unto itself. And so, as I suggested earlier in the show, keeping detailed journal is critical to understanding and fully interpreting dreams and what might be said in a dream. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Mom always aware she could easily take on rituals from other traditions and cultures, but she thinks the knowledge she seeks is lost. She needs to start from the beginning. Yeah, you definitely should contact me about ancestral work and divination, about how to better explore those practices and said traditions. And all is not lost, particularly in the cultures and traditions that you're referencing. It's a question that I've often asked in many of my podcasts. Why aren't more people from Ireland, Britain, Scotland, Germany, acknowledging their ancestors, their ancestry, and indeed those indigenous and aboriginal ancestral practices that came before, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. And in the choosing of alternatives, why are so many people coming for Voodoo? Why are so many people coming for Ifa? And I asked the same question among, the African American community. Why are so many people coming for Ifa? And all the ethnic groups that exist in just Nigeria, not to mention Ivory Coast, Senegal, Ghana, Democratic Republic of Congo, and just the 200 ethnic groups that exist in Nigeria. Why is everybody coming for Ifa? Why is everybody coming for Yoruba? And so I often say it's because it's popularized. That would be my same response to you, Mom O. It's not popularized. And what is being popularized, I can imagine in that region, is Christianity, Islam, Catholicism, maybe Judaism to some degree, but not that which is authentically indigenous, not that which is authentically aboriginal to a particular region, because we violated regions. We've obliterated people's natural sense of region and village and space, and put up sort of artificial boundaries for nationhood in place. So that would be one reason. But then there's religion, Christianity, Catholicism, Judaism, Islam, which seek as gatekeepers to keep people from better knowing, better understanding, better exploring things from a more, aboriginal perspective. I think if we're ever going to, defeat racism and white supremacy as we know it, we're definitely going to have to be much more cognizant of the ethnic boundaries that we've crushed and stepped over, over the centuries. and the dynamics of what that means, what that creates, what that has led to in the world of dominance, power, and control. Electro vibes asks, are there certain things we can do on certain days to help our progression? There certainly is, within the dynamics of, again, Santeria, Voodoo, Ifa, Haitian Voodoo, Kendable, Maria Leonza. There's indeed a ritual calendar that we adhere to, that we follow, that we acknowledge. It is said to be a moon calendar that we are said to acknowledge. And then that is also sometimes governed by the practice and said tradition that you are initiated into. Another way of looking at it and going about it, to sort of take a page out of Mama O's book, is sort of borrowed from that which already exists. We're now operating under this 7-day Greco-Roman sun calendar. Listen, if you're a church goer and you go to church on Sunday, you follow a Greco-Roman sun calendar. Okay, if you are a Muslim living in the West, you follow a Greco sun calendar. If you're a Muslim living in, let's say, Iraq, they have a completely different calendar. So yes, do find something that works for you on Monday. Find something that applies to you on Friday. Find a way to apply your Sunday. You know, everyone doesn't go to church on Sunday. We have Congo Square in New Orleans. For some in our community, Congo Square is their church. You might create a drum circle in your community. You might create, a chanting circle within your community. But certainly on the personal level, Electro Vibes, having something to do, having something to acknowledge, having something to participate in, whether it's individually, privately, or collectively in your community, every day is cathartic, therapeutic, and essential in how I operate, particularly when I'm doing ritual requests. People want you to fix their love life. People want you to magically fix, their career, house, often in 24 hours, mind you. So this having something to do every day to move our spiritual growth further. For some, just learning how to keep a journal is enormous homework just unto itself. Writing and maintaining and keeping mantras for some is an enormous amount of homework just unto itself. Researching ethnic groups, backgrounds, family lines, lineages, getting better acquainted with the 200 ethnic groups that live and exist in Nigeria, getting better acquainted with, the 300 or more ethnic groups that exist, in some of the neighboring countries, and adding that to your system, if you will, of growth development, keeping in line with the topic. It not only helps you to hear and define what's being said to you from spirit, but to clarify your path within it. Within it. We're not all meant to be bishops, priests, priestesses, babalaos, healers, musicians. We're not all going to be in the family of community doing the same roles, doing the same jobs, nor will we all have the same degree of expertise. So doing things that build the body, that attend to the health and wellness of the body. For indeed, if we're eating nonsense, we certainly can't expect spirit, energy, creativity, imagination to be whole and healthy, within your realm of existence. I hear people say, oh, well, I don't remember my dreams. It could very well be what you're eating. every day that's interrupting your ability to remember your dreams. And if you indeed are a person who says, oh, I don't remember my dreams, I want to question your ability to hear and respond to spirit. Because remember I said earlier in the show, dreams, the creative space, the imagination space, very thin line between that realm of awareness or consciousness and the spirit realm, or hearing the voice of God or the spirits or the ancestors with any degree of clarity. So some of you are going to be better at foodie than others. Some of you are going to be better at, gym activity and sportsman-like behavior than some of the rest of us are. You find what first do something, then you find what fits your path, your journey, and be clear about where it is you're going. If I can, I'll let you advise. I want to go back to be quiet, be still, be humble, be open, be honest, and then ask questions. Ask questions. I begin my day and I offer to others to begin their day. This is a great determination. If you are addressing or at the crossroads with shadow work, ask yourself these 5 questions. How do I feel? Am I glad to be here? Is God still in control? Are the ancestors still in control? And then, what do I need? If you can't answer these in the most affirmative, most positive, what do I need? What do I need? And some of you, what do I need is going to be the hardest question. Because it's real easy to say, I need $1 million. It's real easy to say, I need to be younger. It's real easy to say, I need a job, as opposed to being very specific about what it is that we need and where we are in the dynamics of our journey at any given point in time. So addressing those questions, let your vibes and others, being able to fulfill those questions within the dynamics of our routine, our ritual, is a great beginning place for achieving your spiritual goals. For example, my grandmother never did anything too physical on Sundays. She believed that day to let her soul rest. Okay, perhaps. I know once upon a time in this great Christian and Catholic country that we now exist in, it was taboo to work on Sundays, whether you were a churchgoer or not. So I don't know to what degree that truth crosses or intersects with your grandma's truth. But that was a common thing. Even in my own childhood growing up, I had, Protestant friends and family members, and then I had Catholic friends and family members who ate very differently on Fridays than we did, and handled chores on a Sunday very differently than we did. Yeah, for life, in this format, I can only express what I do and what I share with my students and my initiates and my godchildren, and that which was shared indeed with me. I certainly don't try to be everything to all people, especially in today's environment where most people are hell-bent on doing what the hell they want to do anyway. And so they show up to me once they bump their head. So I don't try and be, not only do I not try to be everything to all people, I don't try to be anything to anyone who does not seek me out, who doesn't ask for my help, and who isn't specific about my help. And then when they are, then the response is specific to the individual. And that's why I offered to Mom O and some others to email me and let's formulate a more personal, individual way of addressing and looking at some of these questions without violating traditions. I'm a traditionalist for the most part. I tend to do things the way that they are appropriately and accurately done within these traditions that we often talk about in this space. It's very different than a witchcraft show where they pretty much make up what they want, do what they want, say what they want. Okay. And then when they bump their head, they contact me. So I see the two as very, very different things. And I'm very clear on that. Shamapia, how do you face the dark things you notice about sexual abuse on children that happen through the centuries? I see your question. I'm not sure I'm understanding. How do you face the dark things a person notices within themselves? Or you mean you see it on other people's children? Yeah, I'm confused by the first part. Help me out. Yes and no. Yes and no. There are truths to stories of cannibalism throughout the ancient world, throughout the Aboriginal world. How it shows up in stories, how it's documented, is just as diverse as the location it's being attributed to. And then we have to look at who's doing the documentation. Who's doing the documentation? So we know of stories of headhunters, for instance, certain Aboriginal tribes that hunted heads. We know of tribes, warring tribes that, killed and maybe ate a piece of the heart or the body because it was presumed that they could take on, power from it, energy from it, that they could possess, if you will, the power, the magic of the slaughtered warrior by consuming parts of the body. Now, where it gets sort of mixed up with child abuse and sex abuse, and that I'm a little bit confused about. So you got to be a little bit more clear about that. And how I deal with, as a priest, that is not something that we commonly are faced with. I'm faced with, for instance, generational curse. I'm faced with sex abuse. I'm faced with rape, molestation, drug abuse, abandonment in an average given day in the dynamic of a reading. But the average caller does not originally call me for that. The average client does not originally contact me for that. Well, I want to get better acquainted with my ancestors, or I want a reading about my career path, no one rarely approaches with, I'm trying to address, I'm trying to heal, I'm trying to move beyond. Often those issues float to the surface during the consultation, during the divination. And only then am I able to adequately address it to the extent that the client is ready to adequately address it. And as you can imagine, that within itself can be a great deal challenging. Imagine telling a young woman who came from an abuse background, whose mother was abused, went on to have many children. I'll say more than 4. I won't say the exact amount, more than 4. Got into drugs, alcohol, subsequently, had an overdose. Passed that on to one of the children who was not in her custody, by the way, who now has more than 4 children, who is now dealing with abuse, substance abuse, domestic violence and abuse, and is involved now with a man who's married. And her question to me is, how do I get my man back? How do I fix my relationship? And see, Shamafia, here's the thing. In this space, I often feel like I'm preaching to the choir. But sometimes I often feel like I'm repeating myself over and over and over again in my head. And it might appear that way to my regular listeners as well. But if I don't tell you I have to deal with this every single day, a dozen or more times a week, I often ask, how did you hear about me? How did you find me? Do you listen to my podcast? Or did you just scroll for a reader and you contacted me? Or were you just looking for a great spellcaster and you found my name in Google and you just called me? I beg people, it's in my paperwork, beg you to look at the links, look at the videos, find out who I am, find out what I do, etc., etc., etc. Because Shamafia, they're not coming to me for that. You would think they would be. You would think they should be. You would think we would want to kill the generational curse. You would think we would want to kill the bad behavior. You would think we would want it dead and put an end, to the foolishness that came before. But that's rare in the request. It's rare in the request. And then when it shows up in the request, I've got to listen to spirit, because ultimately, if the client is not ready to hear it, what can I say? What can I then push forward? But if spirit says that I have to say it, that's a different matter. There are things that spirit will tell an accomplished reader that we're not obligated to say, nor should we. Then there are things that spirit will tell us to say that the client is not ready to hear, or doesn't believe that they're ready to hear, or didn't come asking for that we absolutely then have to say. And then that opens up the emotions, the tears, in some cases the anger, the resentment around those very issues. Because often those issues lead to the generational curse that leads to, either the bad behavior or the, bad experience, the bad negative, the negative outcomes that we absolutely got blindsided by and don't know where it came from or how it happened. It's often hidden in those very things. It's often hidden there. So any qualified Babalawo, Ianifa, Mambo, Hogan practitioner understands to the dynamics of your training that there's certain things that have to take place before and after readings, because otherwise you pick up that energy. It's a reason a lot of our ministerial board is grossly overweight and not in touch with their health. It's a reason. And so they might not drink, they might not gamble, they might not, fornicate, they may not, tap other vices, but they're going to find a way to feed that darkness within them, if indeed they are themselves not taking care of the spirit. And that's not just in what we eat, but how we take care of the body, how we take care of the living space, how sacred is the space that we operate in and dwell in each and every day. But it's a lot. There's some people in this room that can tell you, in terms of how I respond to the load of information that I'm often bereft with every day. It's a lot. It's a lot. And so the things that I offer, the things that I suggest here, I most certainly cannot suggest if I can't put them into practice myself. Now, I most certainly can get up out of this chair a little bit more often, get up off this floor a little bit more often, but I'm often doing the consultations and doing the work. And there's a part of me that feels a need to feed and placate and satisfy, before I look at to what degree am I doing that same degree of nurturing for myself. Green Soap asked me to speak on the controversy between Pan-Africans versus Native Indians. Did black people originate in Americans? First of all, I'll be happy to answer that. This is a question that I've answered and have addressed in various ways over the last, 2 years. I even did one show, Green Soap, where I shared photographs of pre-human hominins before Lucy and, the supposed evidence that humanity, came out of the great continent, Mother Africa. I showed, Neanderthals and various pre-human hominids from all over the globe, from all over the planet. One thing that they all had in common is that everybody was black. If we look at black the way African Americans view black and white, and our view of black has been highly tainted and affected by slavery, white supremacy, and the dynamics of slavery and white supremacy. So when we look at a picture and we see dark skin, or we look at a picture and we see nappy hair, and I mean nappy hair, I'll find the photo again and reshare it. But nappy hair, nappy beard, in some cases, straight, coarse in others, more as we would associate with Eskimos or indigenous, Iroquois or indigenous people from the Americas. But that does not necessarily denote or suggest race and ethnicity. And so when we start looking at the DNA, Green Soap, we are not showing up in the DNA results, in the DNA numbers, as having the adequate amount of indigenous or aboriginal blood to the Americas to suggest that black people originated in the Americas, any more than black people originated anywhere on the globe. So often when we say black, we mean African, which is why you compared them to Pan-Africans, which is why I was originally confused looking at your question, because the AGO, I didn't get that part, but I saw Indians, and my mind went to India, Sri Lanka, Burma, where my oldest ancestors are from. When I do my 23andMe ancestral printout, my oldest ancestors were indeed Asian, North American, and for the most part, Southeast Asian, and then all less than 1% in the indigenous Americas, less than 1%. And it continues to be updated. If you're not familiar with the 23andMe, if you're not familiar with the Ancestry.com, they continue to be updated as more copies, more DNA copies, more people take DNA tests, more DNA is harvested from archaeology. The tests are frequently updated. Here lately, they're being updated faster than they were 3 years ago, 5 years ago. DNA tests have become more popular, and the science in harvesting DNA in archaeology continues to improve. And so that number, for me, green soap continues to decline. In fact, I looked at it on my Ancestry.com just before I came on air today. And now the grouping, first geography, is primarily Mexico. And Mexico in the way Mexico would have looked before the Louisiana Passage. Okay, so Mexico, and then Brazil, in terms of indigenous American, as we now today identify indigenous American. So a larger percentage of the enslaved Africans were first of all brought to South America. A larger number went to Brazil, a larger number went to Haiti, Jamaica, that actually made it into this white utopia of North America. That's the first thing. And then those that were brought in were treated brutally, were bred like sheep or cattle, were bred. And indeed, when the transatlantic slave trade was beginning to be outlawed, then there was a great deal of kidnapping that took place, and people being stolen and sold into slavery, or people buying their way out of slavery only to be recaptured and sold back into slavery. But the idea of somehow making indigenous Americans into Africans is just not realistic. There is indeed a portion of us who married, intermarried, had children, but then there also was a greater portion of us who were enslaved by the indigenous Americans. So I think the story in its fullness is not being told in its completion. I think that it, for some people, maybe not you, green soap, but for some people it sort of fulfills sort of a Stockholm syndrome thing, without, claiming to be white, but I'll claim to be indigenous American. And it's something that has been fed into in more recent years, when science continues to improve and show us something very different that we did not originate in the Americas, and there are no real evidence of such. Mom O claims that she worked in Kenya, Uganda, and has some friends in Nigeria, and says that cannibalism was occurring. One tribe, it was a witch doctor only allowed as part of the act of cannibalism. Yeah, we can find it all over the world. Asia, the Americas. And it's certainly not as common today as it was some 200 years ago, 300 years ago. Greetings, Marie Mark. Greetings. Thank you all for being here, for participating. It's been a great hour and 45. Got about 15 minutes remaining. Yeah, it's not unusual across the globe. It's definitely been documented in the Americas, in Asia. It's been documented throughout history, all over the world. I think it's still something that people sort of try and paint Africa with, or even Haiti with to some degree. But you don't see that same taint on Jamaica, or that same taint on India, for example. Shamafia, my cousin Paul would be the best person attack that subject, but he's not here today. Does anyone have any thoughts about the Roman Empire still owning the world? Yeah, that could be a full 2 hour, maybe even a 3 hour topic. There's even discussion of bloodlines and lineages back to the queens of England and other more complicated documents that I don't have the language for. My cousin Paul certainly does. Yeah, the beach is a great place to meditate. I find it very curious, Mom O, that a woman of Scottish and European blood would be hearing voices at the beach, but you attribute it to Yemaya. And again, I suggest that you're right now acting just as guilty as many African Americans who claim Yoruba blood. Again, there are 200 ethnic groups in Nigeria. Why Yoruba? Why Yemaya? Why not Igbo? Why not Hausa? Why not Fan? Why not Ewe? So I take that with a grain of salt. People who are not initiated, who are not a part of a particular ethnic bloodline, who then claim to hear and be in communication with that deity. It just strikes my fancy. Okay, yes. Yeah, I like the idea of working with archangels and planets and moon phases daily and goddess initiative and working in from a place of your understanding. We are often in a rush to sort of, you know, claim title, position, knowledge that we really have no training in, particularly when we're brand new. And we see the same thing with, you know, folks at church who get the Holy Ghost for the first time, or who get baptized, you know, for the first time, or the brother who discovers, Elijah Muhammad and the FOI and the Nation of Islam, you know, for the first time. You know, there's this gung-ho-ness that we have to want to, you know, totally absorb that thing and become that thing and be that thing, as opposed to just starting first with who you are, starting first with yourself, starting first with your family, starting first with your people, and then allow that journey to inform your ritual practice and your ritual choice making. I first came to Voodoo through the Bible. I was an evangelical Christian, raised in a Black Baptist Spiritualist church, then transformed into evangelical Christianity for many years of my youth and my teens, only to then, like many others, be thrust out into the world. And so in my questioning, I questioned God. I said this earlier in the show. I question everything about the Bible. Another way to question the Bible is to study it, is to research it, is to go up under it and behind it and beneath it and in between it, and to expose ourselves to other degrees of information. It may have been the lost books of the Bible that brought me to ancient Egypt, and to begin to look at ancient Egypt, you know, from a more indigenous Aboriginal perspective. And then from ancient Egypt, I began to explore South Central Africa and South Africa and West Africa. And then in my journey, I found home in my journey. So it's a very different thing to start our journey attempting to be master chemists, attempting to be proficient at things that require not just bloodline, lineage, but training and initiation and study in and active participation in. So start with you, beloved. Start with your people, beloved. Start with your geography. Start with where you are, and then allow that to evolve your information. Allow that to evolve, where you're headed, so that it is indeed in line with who you are. Perhaps, yeah. It's really too late in the hour for me now, Craig Burns, to argue voodoo with a U. but I hear what you're saying. I got you. I got you. Yeah, I would be curious to know the answer to that as well, Shamafia. And how exactly are you being communicated with? Oh, I'm running out of time, y'all. Let's see. Perhaps Goddess Initiative, perhaps. That's a conversation I'm not really ready to have on air, but perhaps. I think it has everything to do with what y'all are calling weed. I think it has everything to do with what you all are calling marijuana. Now, if you're in a city like DC, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and y'all are getting that high grade, I don't call that weed. That's why legalities had to be put in place. Legal for medicine we had to jump through those hoops, before we even got to recreational use. But in my opinion, it's just my opinion, that sort of messed up the game. Anyone who's ever taken Marinol, anyone who's ever taken vape, the whole experience is very different. It's very, very, very different. And so some of this high gasoline, high powered, manipulated in a lab, I don't call that, I don't call that weed. But that's just my personal opinion. Though I wouldn't know. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Imani Senko for greetings, beloved. Greetings. Yeah, I like natural, untouched, unadulterated. Yeah, I would love to see us go back to that. We've created a lane for, my God, the pharmaceutical industry, and now a whole new industry to come in, and rule our lives. But that's just me. Greetings, Jody, Netta, greetings. Thank you, Mom. Oh, I really appreciate you being a team player and you're showing up with us today. Let's see. I've learned to be still and become self-aware, and that led me to the top. That led me to tap into spirituality at a deeper level. I believe in focusing on what resonates with my soul. I absolutely agree with that, Jody, Netta, 100%. And there's so many voices and sounds and tunes and advertisements vying for our attention already outside our own heads, outside our own consciousness. And so just being able to just be still and quiet and listen is a critical part to really fully understanding what we need, what we want, and what is best for us, and what is working for us, and what is not working for us. I love Matthew Ferguson. Next time, I'm just not enough time. Y'all are asking too deep of questions too late, too late in the second hour. Can we discuss briefly the blues and its effects on 20th century voodoo hoodoo? Yeah, we don't have enough time. Yeah, I got like 8 minutes. We don't have enough time, but that's a great conversation. I will say that I've seen sort of a relationship develop in the last, I don't know, 5 years here in the city of New Orleans between not necessarily blues, but jazz, the music community, which then could, include blues, and voodoo and hoodoo, um, lecturing together, sharing resources, often at the academic level. Jazz musicians and jazz professors and educators, music educators, educating about hoodoo and voodoo. Hoodoo and voodoo educators educating about jazz and blues and gospel and R&B and subsequently all of our music has its sort of roots there, have its sort of foundation there. So that's a great show topic. I really appreciate that. If I can, I'm going to write that down, and I could do a whole show, a whole podcast just about that topic. I just don't have enough time to do that today. Yeah, I think all things in balance, from yes, treasure, health, physical protection, dreams, intuition, about those who would wish harm, always unexpected. Oh, okay, Shamafia. I'm often behind in the chat in relating the chat to questions that were asked earlier. Yeah, you become aware, but again, it depends on the fine tuning, I think, of each individual gift. And some of us are going to be more empathetic. Some are more empathetic to humans. Some are more empathetic to animals than they are humans. Some are more empathetic to just nature than they are to people. So I think it does show up in varying degrees, depending on the individual person and where they are in their walk. Laying dark things that you hear of to rest as a priest have everything to do with how I have and continue to address my own shadow work. And again, I think practitioners who are sort of empathetic to and sensitive to, some of the harsh realities that exist in our work are sort of reconnecting to their own shadow work and maybe even that which exists within the dynamics of the family. So there has to be a coming to understand self in order to really be loving, be empathetic, be sensitive, be nurturing to others. We hear the occasional horror story of the nursing home with bad behavior, or the medical staff, with bad behavior. People who are charged with our overall physical well-being, but they're not trained to take charge of our spiritual, our mental, our emotional, well-being. So
60 seconds.
And I'm so running out of time. We have to be so in touch with our own trauma, our own pain, our own past, because many of you are still trying to run from it, hide it, toss it out, bury it, where the only way to really dominate it and control it is to go right through it, is to stand right up in the face of it, is to look at it in the eye And it is only in that you have something then to give, to fix, renew, and repair for the next person, the next, client, the next person, friend, family that brings the similar like scenario
10 seconds
to us. It's a wound, I would say, that's reopened every time. Otherwise, you become cold. We've heard some police officers suggest that, you see enough murders, you become resigned to it, you sort of close off to it. I don't necessarily think that that's healthy. I think that's an old way of looking at things. And so you never get rid of it because then you can't identify it when you see it to help the next person. You can't then identify it to heal it, when you have to confront it, again. But those are great questions. Yeah, you all wait to the last hour, towards the end of the show, to want to ask these really deep, complex questions. But I appreciate y'all. I really do. Thank you, Angela Jackson. Greetings, Chef Bougie. Greetings, beloved. Thank you so much for being with us. Yeah, I say it's not weed at all. Yeah, UNGMO. Yeah, it's not weed. Shamafia says, I'm not initiated by a priest specifically, but my ancestors show me what I need to work through. Okay, all is a blessing. Thank you, DivinePrince. I'll be on the lookout for the music series. Yes, yes. And the reality show, but that's another conversation. But I appreciate you all. It's been a great 2 hours. I'm going to have me some lunch and move it forward. I look forward to meeting you here again at high noon U.S. Central Standard Time, remembering that all is truly and indeed a blessing. Ashe, Asheo, Ashe.